So we're just gonna read this article on Teambuildr. It's called "Alternatives to Olympic Lifts," and we're just gonna kind of, I guess, rebut it. And we'll just make a disclaimer at the beginning here. This is not a personal insult to the author.
We're
We're
taking the
just making
arguments.
some.
That's it.
Yeah, we're taking the arguments at face value. I guess we're gonna make a merit based case for why he's wrong, and what he's so. I'll just start reading it. So again, this is on Teambuildr, uh, alternatives to Olympic lifts. So this guy basically says, I'm going to start out this article by saying I don't think you should demonize movements unless they are unsafe, impractical. There can be a time and place for almost anything, and loading parameters can arguably be more important than the movement itself. I like to follow the principles over methods approach. By this, I mean I would rather find an efficient exercise to achieve a goal than ingrain myself with a specific movement and push a square peg into a round hole because I made it about me instead of them. So I like it's obviously you don't. It's a fair point to say you're not going to like demonize movements unless they're unsafe, but that's kind of just a moot point because every competent coach already knows that. And then just I would rather find an efficient exercise to achieve a goal than rather than ingrain myself with a specific movement and push a square peg into a round hole because I made it about me instead of them. I just think this sets up a premise that assumes that exercises are done with one goal in mind, and with the Olympic lifts, like you can't categorize them. So like later on in the article, we'll get to it, but he says like, why are you doing the Olympic lifts? Is it so that you can train triple extension, or is it so you can train for power development, rate of force development? It's like trying to categorize the Olympic lifts as if the value they provide is related to only one physical quality. But the Olympic lifts provide so much more value than just that. And then on the point of the way I train, I want to make the training about the athletes, not about me. It's just this such lame, self-aggrandizing point that I'm not super interested in hearing. Only young, inexperienced coaches who haven't been around long enough are going to try to jam a square peg in a round hole. So I'll let you jump in, Brandon.
With using the Olympic lifts, there's so many things that we've kind of bounced ideas around with why we use them, but we can see that we've got a fast eccentric. So if we want to do some kind of drop catch, we've got that fast turnover of the bar. We're producing high levels of force through propulsion. So we've got early, late, and that middle phase of propulsion where we're going to try and drive our shins forward. So if we're talking about shin angles, which is something that's quite popular amongst coaches at the moment, we're going to roll onto the front of our foot, and then we're going to train proximal to distal. So we are going to try and get the hip to extend and delay that knee extension. So that's something that we're after. We're getting that isometric. We're trying to maintain an isometric back position. We're trying to do a rapid brace. We're trying to create a stretch reflex where we receive the load down the bottom and then redirect that force back up. So we're catching a lot of load, which is a good skill and is a great way to train. Like you're getting front squat volumes in, you're getting squat volumes in, you're getting a pull volume in. So it's just a good clean ticks quite a few boxes and almost like makes many movements redundant in a program.
Yeah, I think when he says, "Are you doing them because of triple extension?" It's just so shallow. Like he's demonstrating a lack of understanding of the Olympic lifts. Really, like what about getting in and out of end ranges under high loads? Getting in and out of end ranges under high forces. What about producing force precisely? So like when you do a heavy Olympic lift or even like a light Olympic lift or moderately heavy Olympic lift, you can't just put all of your force into the bar or else it's going to be an inaccurate pull and you're going to lose it. You're going to hit yourself in the chin. So like being precise with your force production, like the multiple impulse spikes during the concentric portion of the lift. You alluded to that earlier. Just like there's so much more than just power production and triple extension. So he's like trying to categorize the Olympic lifts in this one box, but like you said, there's so many different boxes that the Olympic lifts tick. So like if someone were to ask me why do I program Olympic lifts, like why am I doing Olympic lifts, well, it's just to get generally more athletic. because there's so many things that are involved with the Olympic lifts. It's to improve physical literacy. It's to improve all of the things that we just talked about. It's not, and he just makes the point, are you doing it because of triple extension? Like, no, you can get triple extension doing millions of things. It's just, there's so much more to it. And I think he demonstrates the lack of understanding with the way he phrases that question, like the premise that he assumes with it. So let's move on to the anatomy, to the anatomy part. I'll read a quick snippet from it. He says, if you take a look at an Olympic weightlifter, you'll see a common trend: short limbs, longer torso, and overall shorter height. It'd be far-fetched to say that any one successful Olympic weightlifters look like Davante Adams, much less Kevin Durant. If you don't know who those two are, Davante Adams is a wide receiver, and Kevin Durant is a basketball player. The limb length in proportion to the rest of their body helps them make them successful in their sport, but the long levers make it more difficult to perform the complex Olympic lifts successfully on a regular basis. You can say this about any exercise, that like certain people have a mechanically advantage, or have an advantage based on their anatomy to perform the exercise in a certain manner. Like we talked about the ISA, like people who are longer, taller, slender with more narrow ISA, they're going to respond better to, or they're going to perform like plyos, bounding, sprinting a little bit better than someone who looks like me and they're like short and stocky. So, but based on his argument, are you going to say that someone like me shouldn't sprint? Someone like me shouldn't bound and do a bunch of plyos because my body, uh, my body isn't the right body for it? Well, I'm still going to get a great stimulus out of sprinting and jumping and doing plyos and bounding. So again, the point doesn't really make much sense. And then second point here is, I think the fact that the Olympic lifts are hard makes them more desirable, not less desirable. You know, like training is meant to be hard. It's supposed to be physically challenging. You should want to improve competence performing physical tasks that you're at a disadvantage at performing. Like that makes them better. That's a good thing, you know.
Morphology is such
Now,
an interesting one because everyone wants to everyone brings that up, but then they're not really sure about how to make it like a solid concrete argument. And that's because there probably isn't a solid concrete argument of why you can't do a specific movement. The only person that's stopping you, it's like back squatting. I'm not built for back squatting. Well, if you accumulate a high level of fatigue and your form, like if you find your form breaks down quite quickly and back squats just, or like whatever movement gives you a lot of joint pain, you find that you like it's just not working for you in your program. Well, obviously it's not an efficient movement if you're getting so much fatigue from that movement and you're not being able to create a high level of stimulus. Then just pick a different exercise. It doesn't necessarily mean that that movement's a bad exercise, but I just looked up Davante Adams is 98 kilos and he's 180 centimeters. So he's 185 centimeters. So he's a little bit shorter than me. And I'm pretty sure I've been able to get quite a few results from Olympic lifting. So then when we talk about that, plus if we're going to talk about weightlifting, some of the best weightlift, like some of the best people are obviously in the higher weight classes. Lasha is the person who has the highest Sinclair. And he's 160 kilos. He's a massive dude. So when we talk about that, those arguments don't really hold up. And then we obviously see people who have no arms or only have one arm. Like there's so many CrossFitters. I feel like CrossFit has just exploded and shown how these arguments don't really stack up to reality, and how you have these adaptive CrossFitters who maybe have like a stump for a leg or a strap for an arm, and they're still clean and jerking. They're still doing the jerk with one arm. And then you have a healthy athlete who you're going to say, no, they can't learn how to do a power jerk because a landmine is going to be more customizable for their joint positions. And we just see how exercise science just completely fucks it all up. When we look at we see like, yeah, these athletes who are going to perform a power jerk or a split jerk, you're going to be able to move. If we want to talk about loadability, so we pick movements that are more loadable, they're going to pick a trap bar. Cool. What's more loadable? A landmine's push press or a split jerk? Split jerk's way more loadable. So we're kind of like shooting ourselves in the foot. And then are you going to learn how to do, if you want to do like rapid changing of legs, athletes, like coaches talk about rapid changing of legs. There was a post I saw the other day of like why a step up is sport specific, and they're like doing a step up to a box and they're changing legs, and it's like, cool, you want to talk about rapid changing of legs? Well, you can do a split catch. And under load, so you're going to be yielding that weight, so you're going to develop the skill of yielding as well. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. So many ways we can go with that.
All right, we'll keep moving on. So then he says, "You probably think I'm a hater." I gotta find the quote for it. Says, "I know what you're thinking. I'm a hater because I can't teach the lift, or even worse, I'm some new age coach who thinks he knows better than you." I mean, I don't necessarily think that. I don't know this guy, but I do think that um, there's a lot of coaches who veer away from the Olympic lifts, who aren't good at performing the lifts themselves, and like the standard that they have for what is a good Olympic lift is really low. We should pull up Nick DeMarco's Instagram post from like a couple of years ago where he basically he basically talks about in the post how he is not a fan of Olympic lifting, and he shows videos in the post of his college athletes performing cleans, and they're pretty bad, honestly. They're really bad cleans. But in the post, he talks about how the videos are demonstrating like a high standard or good technique on the clean. So it's like the standard that they hold their athletes to in performing them is really low. And I think it's kind of like, well, yeah, if you're performing them like that, you're not going to get a ton of value out of the Olympic lifts. So maybe that influences the way they think about the Olympic lifts too. I'll make a point here.
We're also assuming, Will, that you need to do them at a heavy weight and like maximal intensity in order to elicit any kind of stimulus. So that's also like something that like doesn't really hold up as well. So we don't need to
Right.
max out. Like you could just do, I don't know, a 10-minute EMOM, which doesn't take a whole lot of time, and you can get 10 quality reps at an RP7 of a power clean and power jerk, and you can get a huge stimulus, and then you still have the rest of your session to do everything. So if we're talking about time allocation, we can use differential learning where, yeah, and Joel Smith's quite good with this, where he's really good at contrasting these two movements together. He might go, cool, let's do a oscillatory lunge, and then I'm going to do a split jerk, or I'm going to do a low ceiling broad jump or consecutive broad jumps into a heavy front squat. So like we can just contrast these movements together and create really engaging workouts that are going to tick all those athletic qualities we want off.
Okay, so we'll talk about the exercises that he says are better alternatives than the Olympic lifts. The first one is a split stance drop in jump. Since he's comparing these to the Olympic lifts, you're getting the same or very similar stimulus doing that as you would with the Olympic lifts. You're not, but he thinks you are. So he says with this exercise to grab a pair of dumbbells that's around 10 to 20% of body weight, which is just a totally arbitrary load right there. Why 10? Why is it 10 to 20? Why is it not 30%? And are you sure it's 10 to 20% of your body weight instead of 10 to 20% of your back squat max? No one really knows. No one really knows, especially the people that are pushing these exercises and these loads on you. These are just all arbitrary loads that are given. If he says the load is because he cares about the speed of the movement, well, then the movement is still not even close to the speed of an actual sprint. It's still so much farther away from the actual speed of a sprint. It's not sports specific in any way. It wouldn't meet the criteria of dynamic correspondence. And I think the dynamic correspondence argument is fake anyways. But if that's the argument he wanted to make, it doesn't even meet the criteria for it. So, I mean, that's all I have to say about this exercise.
Yeah, the idea of I had a client in last night who just came back from Poland from Masters Worlds for sprinting, and so he was like, "Oh, we need to make all my movements explosive." And I was like, "Well, this is the goal of like we're doing power cleans now. Like you're gonna you're jumping 3 days a week, and Matt Watson is helping him with his plyos. You're gonna jump. Why do you want to just do one? Like you're again going to detrain your ability to produce high outputs in the clean if you think about just making everything explosive. Just focus on the extremes. So we'll just lift something moderately heavy, but it's not going to be the whole program. We're just going to do a little bit of that. And then you're going to do something moderately, like a little bit faster than that with probably a little bit less load. That's going to be a power clean. And then you're going to do all your the fast stuff, which is going to be unloaded. Like if we want you to move really fast, well, just jump without load. Like don't jump with load. Just do it. Just do it without load. And those unloaded movements are going to also train the other extreme. So I think we don't need load to improve performance. We can someone like if you think about young kids who don't have access to any kind of strength and conditioning, they just go to Little Athletics and they get faster and they keep PBing. They're just getting better. Like the sprinting is also eliciting a ton of performance. So the whole idea, just because you have the dumbbells there doesn't mean the movement's any better. And then if we want to talk about improving posture and improving the way that you move when you're doing these split catch movements, well, a medicine ball is probably going to be the best way to probably improve posture with these movements. So if we want to make the landing more difficult, so when we talk about those, Matt calls them like it's an overcoming split jump or an overcoming lunge, where you start tall, you jump, drop into the lunge and drive up. So if you use a medicine ball, you can do a fake throw. You're going to increase those ground reaction forces. You're going to increase the velocity of that landing, which is what we want. But if we just hold load and then drop, we're just going to get gravity acting on us with a little bit more load into that position. But if we can try and train yielding and try and train that action and that quality where we do a fake throw and use a medicine ball, we're going to be able to produce a lot more force. And that's going to be a far more valuable way to optimize, I think, that movement. Which is probably what I would do. So those fake throws, using medicine ball to improve posture. And then if we look at that split stance, it's like very closed in. Maybe we can get a more expansive base, get people into different positions, and access some more internal rotation or whatever we're after.
And even with the fake throws, you're still not even getting close to the same yielding forces with those compared to catching a clean. Like,
no, it's just another, and it's just another movement. But it's just another movement, and that's it. But this is the thing: if people are improving, so this is the really funny thing. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of analysis to find out exactly where we are improving, or exactly what's giving us the improvement. And it's probably the summation of all these things that's giving us the improvement. So if we look at things like business is probably the best example. They'll say, "Oh, certain promotion led to these sales," and if we look at our own Instagrams and we look at how we sell things and make money, a random post that we could have done from 3 months ago could be triggering in our clients' minds. And then they just saw one from us today and then they click purchase and buy our program. We don't necessarily know what exactly caused that decision-making, like what exactly led to that result. So when we're talking about, well, this drop and catch variation of a lunge, this is the thing that's definitely going to lead to your improved performance on the field. No fucking way. That doesn't happen. If we can't say that for business and we can't say that for other people who have so much data to make their own decisions, like that base these decisions on, who are we to say that this movement is exactly the key to your performance? So I think that's where we also go wrong. It's like, no, these are just some general movements that are going to help make you move a little bit better, expose you to different areas, different joint angles, different positions, and they can be quite useful in your program. And you might want to make them more intense, and you might want to pair them with other things. It's exercise selection is an interesting one.
Yeah. Well, we can move on to the next one, which is a hurdle hop. I don't think we have to play a video of a hurdle hop.
No,
everyone knows
that. Yeah.
But it goes back to earlier. He said if you want to train true triple extension, which again I don't know the difference between true triple extension and false triple extension. But if you want to train true triple extension, you should do it unilaterally. But then he's got a hurdle hop, which is bilateral. So, and I totally support people doing hurdle hops. I'm not opposed to them at all. But again, it's not even a similar stimulus as an Olympic. So it can't really be. You can't really call it an alternative to an Olympic lift. It's just another thing that should be part of most people's training programs if they want to improve their athletic abilities.
But then the other argument is, well, okay, well, say I'm a coach, I don't have the resources. What do? I don't have hurdles. So like I'm a coach, I don't have hurdles. I don't have 8 hurdles. And I don't want to spend the money on hurdles. Well, the benefit for people who are listening is jumping in the air is the same as jumping on a box or over a hurdle. So if you just did some ping tier leaps, if you just did some high intensity leaps for height, you're going to get you do them with a full foot landing, and you don't need to worry about spacing the hurdles. You don't need to worry about falling over the hurdles. You don't need to worry about the money that it costs or the time that it costs to takes to set up hurdles. You can just start doing some extensive plyos, and then you can just get into, you can make them more intensive. You can do some hopping. You can just pick the leg up if you want, and that's going to be the same thing. The hurdle is the intent. The hurdle is the thing that is just driving intent for you to jump over. It's not, and most people, I think, probably space them incorrectly, probably have them facing the wrong way so that when you jump over them, if they don't fall down, you fuck your shit up. So if we're talking about athletes and safety, well, why don't we just get them to jump in the air? Isn't that a far more simple approach to strength and conditioning?
Yeah, and then the last one's the approach jump, which again is like I I can't really elaborate on the approach jump because it's just the same to me as a hurdle hobby. Like an approach jump is just a good thing to do. It's
Yeah.
not it's not an alternative to Olympic lifting because the stimulus is not they're not of equal value. They're different stimuli. So um and I guess like the med ball toss I think is fine too. You were talking about like why does it have to be a granny toss? Why can't it just be like you take a ball and you throw it hard?
Yeah.
That you're probably going to elicit greater adaptation if you just take a ball and you spend 10 to 15 minutes throwing the ball as hard as you can, for height, for distance, in different movement planes instead of trying to be like, well, I should do the granny toss specifically, you know?
Well, even thinking about, okay, well then let's try and be more creative. Why don't we just use the med ball as a med ball volleyball, and we just have it as a game, and we
Yeah,
gamify that, and that can be a warm up, and that can be far better integration of these concepts. So we've just gone, like, if I put in a program and we downloaded the program, if I put in a program 5 max effort med ball tosses, for example, how likely are people to skip that? Okay,
highly likely,
let's say they do it. They're not going to put or spend more time like, oh, those first jumps are pretty average. Those first throws are pretty average. I'm going to warm up a little bit more and spend more time on it. If you get someone playing a game where they have to throw that medicine ball over a specific, like even if you stack some chairs up, or if you put it over a volleyball net, and you're doing, or even like a goal like at like on a soccer field, if you're doing that, they're probably going to play for like 10 minutes. How many more reps are they accumulating? How much more effective is that for training? And then they're not even thinking that it's training, but their body's receiving that kind of stimulus. Then they're engaged. They're tapping into that mindset of putting in high effort. They're warmed up, and now we can peak them towards a session. So if we think about like our microcycle design, and this is something that I think you do quite well, it's like, cool, we've got a bit of preparation. We're going to warm up. We've got our main thing in the middle. So our session is building towards this peak, and then we've got our accessories where we're going to drop off after and kind of move through those. We're maybe training the opposite end of whatever we started with, or the opposite end of our peak. So we're going to taper down. If we just start with, cool, everything's power, let's go. This is your power workout. And then we're just going to throw shit in the air. So we're peaking there. And then we've got just movements that kind of drop off. The whole session and the whole program doesn't really blend together. So I think, yeah, we can be so much more intelligent with microcycle design. But then when we talk about, you mentioned this when we had our webinar, was you differentiate between plyos and jumps, and that's a great thing I think that's great. So we've got our jumps where we're going to just like touch the rim. That's your approach jump. You can just practice like a 3-step approach, 5-step approach, 7-step approach, however you want to factor that into your program. And then you've got your plyos where you're working on other qualities. You can get that tendon reflex from those extensive ones. You can work on those low ceiling ones where you're managing center of mass in a deeper range, and you're probably getting other benefits from that. So I think there's a lot of value in different types of movements, but then even just understanding exercise. So alternatives to the Olympic lifts, exercise selection is load management. Don't drive one position for everything. That is where the key value is. And I think if that's the takeaway point from me anyway.
Yeah, I don't have much more to elaborate on. I think we kind of made all of our points. If people, so for anyone listening or watching this out there, if you want to go read this article, it's on Teambuildr. Just go to teambuildr.com and then look up alternatives to Olympic lifts. Yeah, so that's all we got for this one. Like I said, if you want to go see this article, go to Teambuildr. Just look up alternatives to Olympic lifts on that website, and you'll find it pretty easily. But that's all we have for us. So thanks for watching the video or listening, and appreciate you taking the time. We'll see you next video.